Today on Joseph Jaffy is Not Famous, I'm joined by transformation powerhouse Stephanie Prenderville. We're talking AI, people, and why your biggest risk isn't tech. It's failing to bring your team with you. If you haven't mapped out your sunrise and sunset roles, you're already behind. So find out more exactly what that means. Let's get on with the show.
It's not TV, it's HBO.
It's not TV, it's HBO.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Joseph Jaffy is not famous.
Joseph Jaffy is not famous. Mwah.
Joseph Jaffy is not famous. Me, Tom Arnold, I am very famous. I absolutely because it's very true. Like, I hadn't freaking heard of you until I sitting on a Friday night. This is how bad my life is. Listen, fucker, good luck. Good luck with your rebranding. Like anybody knew what the name was before. What was the name? Okay, who gives a shit? That's a good name because it's got your name in it. You can pretend you're humble. You say, I'm not famous. And, which you aren't. So you're just not being anyway, but I hope you get famous doing this. Good luck to you.
Am I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah, he's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian doesn't want to see anyone else. Piss off!
That's the one. Because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian.
Hey, Manuel Kemp was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. P&G now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
Did I do that? You're insane! Welcome to another episode of Joseph Jaffy is Not Famous, and why would I be famous when I have the very famous Stephanie Prenderville joining us from Ireland, if I said that correctly. And, I'm picking up accents, and I expected someone who was very Irish, but I think there might be some American in her as well. But certainly I heard the M's, and so we're going across the pond, across the sound, across the pond. We're going to talk about sunrise, sunset. We might even do a little duet from Fiddler on the Roof. And we're going to be talking about messy beginnings. We're going to be talking about Goldilocks. We're going to be talking about AI. It is the primordial ooze that is just free-flowing conversation, and I'm excited. And she will be joining in just a few moments. But first, my why statement. As a teacher, facilitator, and coach, I help high aspiring entrepreneurs, owners, and their leadership teams get unstuck, return to growth, and become forever changed. When I started Corona TV, which is now called Joseph Jaffy is Not Famous, it was March 2020, and people were stuck at home, quite literally, but also stuck in general. So when you're stuck, the best thing to do is to get unstuck. And that's what hopefully I do here with a bit of hope, positivity, and optimism. And please subscribe to the show, bit.ly/subscribe to the show if you want more just like this. Well, when it comes to growth, for the last 2 years, I've been helping small and medium business leadership teams return to growth or grow in general. And, growing is not just about profitability and market share and EBITDA. don't even know what that means. It's sometimes about growing up and growing in terms of maturation and prioritization and finding balance. So just remember that word, because we're going to come back to that shortly. And then finally, Forever Changed, the title of my 6th book, How a Global Pandemic Changed My Direction, My Purpose, and My Life. And the hypothesis in this book is if you did not change during the 2020 to 2022 timeframe, you missed an opportunity. But don't worry, there is still time, because there's a formula. I call it Amor, Veritas, and Vigor. Amor, love what you do, the search for happiness. Veritas, be true to yourself, purpose and meaning. And finally, Vigor, stay the course. It's all about energy. It's all about stamina. It's all about endurance, the long game, or as they say in Finland, sisu. But now it's time for our seated soliloquy. And today, as I was mentioning, the soliloquy is called the Goldilocks approach. I've got to tell you this, I was inspired because I saw that Stephanie talks about Goldilocks governance, and I'm sure we'll get to that later. But I've been using this word a lot lately. And of course, we all know the story of Goldilocks. Not too hard, not too soft, just right. Or the gruel, or whatever the 3 bears food or stew was, not too hot, not too cold, just right. It was all about finding that perfect balance. There's the word again, balance. And it seems so obvious to me, and yet, there's that saying, right? Common sense is not that common. How many people are actually able to find or pursue or realize common sense? So it's not that obvious. It's not that common in terms of being able to find the balance. This doesn't mean 50%. It doesn't mean exactly in the middle. It means the right balance for you. It means not living on the edges or the extremes. I mean, you can exist there. You can be extremely left brain or extremely right brain. You can be extremely empathetic or empathic. You can be extremely analytical. But for the most part, it's a very difficult place to live and survive and thrive on the edges. We inevitably end up somewhere in the middle, the right balance between the two extremes. And for me, that's always been what I would call the Goldilocks approach. Not too much, not too little, but just right. So think about that and consider it, whether it's work-life balance in your life, or whether you're trying to straddle between two seemingly sometimes opposite or diametrically opposed worlds. You can find a balance. And if you approach it like Goldilocks, maybe there will be a happy ending for you. And of course, that's what we're all after at the end of the day. So now it's time to welcome my guest, Stephanie Prenderville. I went and took her bio from her website and just asked ChatGPT to help condense it into 100 words. We're going to be talking about how humans and machines should be working together and what the right balance is as well. Stephanie Prenderville has spent 25 plus years helping companies thrive through transformation by focusing on people first. With deep experience across pharma, finance, and professional services, she's worked with everyone from global giants like Pfizer and Tesco to hungry startups looking to scale. Stephanie's not your typical consultant. She's a builder of vision, a solver of complex problems, and a champion of culture as a strategic lever. Her background in business development gives her a rare blend of commercial savvy and human insight. The result? Measurable growth, energized teams, and strategies that actually stick. If change feels messy, Stephanie makes it more meaningful. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Joseph. That was just, I know that you say ChatGPT pulled that together, but I'm going to have to hire that ChatGPT. That was very good.
It's yours for $23.95 a month.
The good thing is that the euro is actually worth much more than the dollar at the moment, so makes that price more affordable.
I'm going to tell you that I mean it falls straight into one of the things that we're going to talk about, which is how to, there are all these things, right? It's not the gun, that kills people. It's the person that pulls the trigger, but it's how you use ChatGPT. And I just, that's another commonsensical thing. So the art of the prompt, the art of multiple prompts, the art of revision, that's what gets you there. It's knowing what to ask and then how to build on that, as opposed to, what's the old saying, garbage in, garbage out.
And knowing what tool to use for what task. So, you don't use GPT when you're trying to do math problems. You pick whatever tool it is that works better for what that particular challenge is. And I do think it's hard for people to get their head around that it may take multiple prompts to get to what you're looking for, as opposed to just doing a brain dump and going, it's supposed to understand me and it's going to figure out what it is that I'm trying to do. You're taking your chances if it's able to do that or not.
And if you think about even something as simple as the idea of multiple prompts, just frame it to people, or for people that are watching, to think about when you brief work, or when you ask someone to do something, or even your boss asks you to do something, how often, I mean, think about writing a book or something. Do you literally, submit the first draft? Is the work always perfect the first time around? No, there are revisions, there's feedback, there's the ability to improve, with a little, it is, it's a dance. There's a backwards and forwards. It is a process. So why would prompting on, generative AI be any different?
Exactly. The analogy that I think sticks so well and works for a lot of people is, think of it as your intern. Think of it as, a recently graduated person joining the world of work. They're smart, they're capable, but the better your instructions, the clearer it is that you want. And we're quickly becoming lazy with AI and with Copilot and with LLMs, that are free LLMs, because as they're getting better and we're getting more used to, this is now a part of tools that are available to us. I think people are just taking, a Google type approach, what you used to put into like a search engine, and putting that straight into some type of chat GPT. But taking the time to actually understand how to prompt really makes a big difference. And I want to pick up on a couple of things that you said during the intro. And there's just so many things you and I could unpack. I mean, an hour is just not going to be enough for us. So I'm originally from Atlanta. I grew up in Southern California. I met an Irishman with a whole bunch of mad Irish people that I hung out with in Paris years ago. And then we moved back to Ireland because I preferred it to the States, even though I really, really, really miss the weather in California. So there's that one part. Where I kind of want
sunny.
It's, it actually is not raining today, so that's a nice change. The sunrise and sunset roles you touched on, but I'm going to go back to the prompting just for a second. The reason why I think people aren't getting into better prompting or using GPT more effectively is, yes, it's new, but I don't think we figured out our emotional relationship with AI yet. And in Ireland, I think we're a bit further behind the curve. So when I say that, obviously when GPT came out, or not just GPT, but generative AI, when generative AI came on the scene 2 years ago, and the whole sense of existentialism, started to really come up, and are the machines going to take over and become, capable of killing us all? That started a certain amount of fear. And then that fear kind of morphed last year into a real concern around cybersecurity, which was based on real reality. And then this year, I think because of everything that's going on globally, politically, economically, something as big as AI is just feeling overwhelming. And so all of those are different emotional states. And we've got this technology that is the biggest breakthrough of anything any of us in our lifetimes has ever experienced, and our ability to process it is just not, we just haven't caught up with it yet. And I think that emotional relationship is slowing down our trust. And in Ireland, there's a recent report that was researched is the right word to say, by Trinity University and Microsoft. And it just came out in the past month, and it shows 74% of workers in Ireland are using AI at work, but less than 10% of SMEs have a policy in place around how to use AI. So it's much bigger when you get into multinationals and larger organizations, but 80% of businesses in Ireland are SMEs. So 80% of businesses, only 10% of those have a policy in place, and 74% of their people are using AI. But they're not necessarily using it safely. We've got GDPR, we've got compliance issues here. And then you've also got this whole trust factor that's going on, and organizations aren't taking the step. Here's how we're going to use AI. Here's how we're going to support you and help you with that. And here's how it's going to actually make your life better at work.
Well,
so
I want to just jump in for a second as well. When you say SME, that stands for small and medium enterprise. We would we would call it SMBs, but the reality is that it's actually I would hazard a guess. It's skewed radically towards the larger companies, the ones that do have policies. And so even if you take the small and medium business out, I focus on SMEs here in terms of my own coaching. But something Rashad Tabakawala said to me when he was on the show is, he said, I have better access to AI in my apartment than Publicis or some of the largest public companies on. So that's another interesting angle, right? You've got the small and medium companies that it's like the Wild West. There's no policy because they're too small, at least allegedly. Yeah. And then you got the large companies that are controlling. Again, it's Goldilocks, right? So you've got too little. You've got too little control on the one side. You've got too much control on the other side. And instead, what we should be looking for is the just right. What is just right, in your opinion?
And I love that you actually picked up on that in the soliloquy. I just thought that was actually quite cool. Hard to survive on the edges, and balance was great. So I'm gonna borrow and steal some of that for the way that I talk about that with businesses. So I've been doing change for a really, really long time, and change is messy. But change is also predictable to a large extent, because the way that humans respond to change is to immediately say, hold on, how is this good for me? What am I going to have to give up that I'm not going to want to give up? So there's always a certain amount of sometimes conscious, but always a minimum amount of unconscious resistance around change. And what I've come up with is to try to make it less messy for people are a number of different frameworks to understand change and to make it more predictable for leaders and for organizations. So one of those is a 5 enabler of AI success model. And Goldilocks governance is one of the 5 enablers. Oh, very nice. Very nice. I love that stream there. That's clever.
It's very well done. The studio behind me, as you can see, how modern it is. There are 10,000 humans behind those monitors and 50,000 AI bots. So,
that is so cool.
This is about as professional. By the way, for people that are watching, we were joking. I said, I hope you don't mind the F word in the beginning. And I said, okay, the word is fuck. And Stephanie said, that word is a verb in Ireland.
It's an adjective.
An adjective. So
it's basically it's
I wasn't very good
fucking
at
raining
languages.
outside. It's fucking hilarious.
Well, I said fun is a noun on the show. So there you go.
So hopefully that's okay for your viewers as well. So Goldilocks governance is, as you say, it's balanced. It's trying not to crack a sledgehammer trying not to crack a nut with a sledgehammer. It's trying to actually get the right balance in between how do we give you some guidance on where it makes sense to use AI, which AI tools to use, how to make sure that we protect our IP and the security of our organization and our cybersecurity, and getting that right with making sure that we use AI for innovation, for heavy lifting of repetitive work. So, all the stuff that we know that AI is good at, and giving that balance into an organization. And often when it comes to new governance, we tend to overload it. We tend to go to the Papa Bear, size, and it's way too hot, and it's just overwhelming. And that's the last thing that you want to do, because you're going to kill all the innovation that using AI at work can give you, both from a new product development and a creative perspective. It can take all the notes so that everybody in the room can participate in the blue sky thinking. It can even participate in the blue sky thinking with you, but then it can also do all the repetitive, mundane stuff so that you can actually put more energy into the strategic, into the innovative side. So that's where the Goldilocks governance comes in, is it allows you to really look at your risk as if you're a chief risk officer, really going at it as you should, but being balanced in how you choose to get to the other end. If you've got the best publishers in the world that are in an organization that are like, you absolutely can't use this because we're protecting our IP, you're limiting what some of the superhuman powers are that AI can bring us when we're augmenting with using AI in a work environment, in a safe, responsible work environment.
It seems like there's that quote: "The only thing to fear is fear itself," and it's I I have the example now where some of the calls and the community calls we do, the policy is no note takers, and while I can understand superficially why so many companies are kicking out the note takers, the reality is most of us, and when I say most, I'm probably talking 99% of us, won't even go back to check the transcript or to use the transcript. So it's like a safety blanket that we don't even need. And so what's the fear? Is the fear that the person is going to take this and share it with like, if you actually just try and play the fear out, or maybe the fear is that the LLM is going to use your proprietary data and get smarter by it, and etc. But it's what's the real fear? The fear is not even rational at the end of the day. It's like, once upon a time we were not allowed to bring cameras or video cams to a concert, to a pop concert, and now everyone has their phone. So there is this overwhelming resistance to change, and then in the blink of an eye, the walls crumble.
I'm so interested to hear you say that, because I've been wondering if this is an Irish conundrum. And I've been here for 25 years, and I've been hanging out with Irish people for more than 30. And I spoke to a executive coach here in Ireland the other day, and I just thought that she captured it so well. She said, in Ireland, we're really slow to embrace change, even though we're an incredibly progressive country. Like, we had, the first gay marriage legalized, and there's a number of really super progressive steps that we've actually taken. But her point was, we're slow to embrace change, and then when we do, we're all in. Like, the night before the smoking ban went in, everybody was inside the pub smoking like crazy in the smoking room section, going, you want me to go out in the fucking rain, in this country? Never going to work, never going to work. Next day, everybody outside meeting their new best friend and their new partner, having the best time of their lives, going, what do we resist this so much for? So there's that automatic change piece that we've talked about. There's also, when it comes to the note taker piece, do people think that AI is going to capture them and then turn around and replicate their image, or that they're going to lose control over something that they've said that they no longer have control over, which at the end of the day is actually just a level of misinformation. And if I turn it on its head with one of the best use cases that I've seen in Ireland, and I've been searching for about the past, since last September. So I was asked to do a talk by Industrial Relations News on AI and to help their members kind of understand how AI could be used in a number of different work contexts. And I thought, okay, I'm going to really, I understand from Ireland's perspective, there's a real sense of show me who's done it and show me how much money they've made, show me how well it's worked for them. And that's not different from a lot of other countries, but that's a very kind of Irish business mindset. I was like, okay, I want to bring that to this audience. So I started searching for deployed bespoke use cases. So not looking at Microsoft Copilot as a deployed example, because that's AI light, but something that was really specific to an organization problem. And Leia Healthcare brought in a bespoke proprietary made note taker for their customer service teams when they're processing insurance health claims. And a lot of, if you now have to, in this day and age, talk to a human about a health claim, it's typically a really uncomfortable conversation for the human. The human is mad, they're upset, there's something that's gone wrong and it's related to their health. So these are really tough calls for the customer service team. And what the current customer service agents were doing previously is they were having to take all of the notes by hand. Then they were uploading them into the system for accuracy and bringing empathy and listening and giving the right advice and policy answer back to their customer. And it was such an emotional load on the customer service agent to get that right, because it's part of the claim approval process and be on with the customer at the same time. So they came up with a note taker, but it's not 100% accurate, but it's about 98% accurate. And now the claims agent only has to go through and verify, make sure that everything is correct. It's saving them 1.5 minutes on average per call, times an average of 11,000 calls per week per agent.
Wow.
So it's a massive savings for the organization. And they're now saying they can't live without it because the emotional cognitive load, they can give all their focus to their customer and know that the system is learning more and more and more, but they still have total control. And that's where, if the communities that you're in are saying no note takers, all they have to do is go back and go through the transcript and say, actually, there's errors here. But if they go through and see there's no errors, then why wouldn't you actually give yourself that benefit? And that's where that whole emotional journey, and where I'm on a mission in Ireland. And funny enough, the head of IT and Leia Healthcare is from California as well. I'm on a mission to help Ireland responsibly, safely adopt AI, because we're the perfect sandbox. We speak English, we're part of the European Union, we're well connected and friendly with the UK, well connected and friendly with the US. We're everybody's buddy, everybody loves the Irish. And we're the perfect size to trial things because we're big enough with 4 million people thereabouts. We're big enough that you can really, really test things and get the diversity of marketplaces and diversity that you need in a trial, but we're small enough that you can actually analyze what the results are really effectively. And if Ireland doesn't jump on the bandwagon,
you're a Goldilocks country at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
Not too big, not too small. Small enough to care, large enough to make a difference. I want to pick up on this because it's actually a perfect segue. When we talk about diversity, we talk about messiness. I want to spend a little bit more time on messiness. And I always find a quote for my guests. This is the one I found for you. And we're going to actually do a little bit of an exploration, which I think is going to be kind of interesting. So the quote is, biological diversity is messy. It walks, it crawls, it swims, it swoops, it buzzes. But extinction is silent, and it has no voice other than our own. So I found this quote because I was looking for messiness as it related to diversity, and I'm going to show you we're going to actually go through the prompts, and you'll see why in a moment. First of all, this was by Paul Hawken, who said this. First, I thought about it and I was like, I have my interpretation of what this means. What's yours before we begin with ChatGPT, and I'll walk you through the whole thread. How do you
I'd love to know
interpret
who
this?
Paul Hawkins is. Can you tell me what he does?
I'm sure we could find out. I will type it now.
Okay. So depending on what he does, that to me is going to, as an ex-chief people officer, as a people leader, what you do has a lot of orientation how you think.
All right. He's an American environmentalist, entrepreneur, author, economist, and activist.
Oh, well, I love it that he's diversified. So he's diversified himself. So biological diversity, as in you're looking across all different species. Humans walk, bugs crawl, fish swim, birds swoop, bees buzz. So diversity is across all those different species types. And all of those are creating this energy in the universe, but the energy in the way that they move and in the way that they interact. Extinction, not having any of those, so not having that biodiversity, not having that messiness means that we're potentially narrowing ourselves into extinction by not having the resilience of the diversity. And therefore, we've lost, it's almost like you've lost your freedom of speech through genetic diversity.
Okay, so that's a completely different interpretation, which I love, because the question, of course, comes down to whose voice, and whose extinction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a guest on, which is actually ChatGPT. So welcome to the show. And what we're going to do is walk through it. And I thought it might be very interesting to have your commentary, guide us through this. And I'll prompt you too. So I start off by going, what does this quote mean? And so we get a comment about the fragility of life and the finality of extinction. And it says, I'll just go over what's in bold, right? This idea of this TLDR, life is loud, death is silent, and we are the only ones left who can speak up for the voiceless. Now, one thing that's starting to happen, which I find fascinating, and I want to go back to it for a second, because to me, this is like a real interesting conversation. You spoke about laziness, and you spoke about the fact that, and so I jotted down, as AI is getting smarter and better, we're getting lazier and softer. And the analogy that I use is like a Waze or a GPS. We're forgetting our sense of direction. We're losing our sense of direction. We're ceding it all to the machine. We just follow it blindly. And if the machine said go left and it was going left off a cliff, bye-bye, thanks for playing, right? So as opposed to being a little discerning, as opposed to going, I appreciate your recommendation, but I'm actually going to take a different path because I know better or I feel more comfortable. So this sits in my mind as we go back to where we are right now. So I say, and why am I mentioning this to you? Because the new GPT is, would you like a visual? It's prompting you now. Do you want more? Do you want more?
Yeah.
It's it's the Wicked Witch feeding Hansel and Gretel. It is. It's like more.
It's
candy.
Goldilocks feeding the bears.
Yeah, more candy, little fat boy. And so unbeknownst, it's fattening us so that it can devour us. But anyway, I digress. So here's the visual description. And in the copy, would you like me to generate this for you? Sure, right? Crawl, swoops, buzzes, extinction is silent. It has no voice other than our own. And now here comes what I'm thinking, right? Could an interpretation of this quote be along the lines of embrace the messy beginning? Because the only thing worse than that is silence, i.e. nothingness. Going back to the idea of a pub, the only thing worse than an overcrowded pub is an empty one, right? So now I get the embrace, I love the lens, embrace the messy beginning, stop kissing my ass, right? Because the only thing worse than chaos is silence, messiness is a sign of life, blah, blah, blah. So would you like, again, more candy, fat boy? You know, so like, would you like an image? Sure, no problem. So now I have another image. But I'm not satisfied. I was thinking perhaps
I wouldn't be satisfied with that either. That's a bit lame.
I was thinking perhaps another interpretation is being alone. The only voice is ours, versus the messy noise at the beginning involves conflict, healthy conflicts and chaos. This is meant to represent change and discomfort as well. So again, you know, extinction as isolation, aloneness, etc. Another phrasing of your idea, which I like the juxtaposition, right? Better a room full of noise than a graveyard of silence. Silence already means it's already over. Would you like a visual again? More candy, fat boy. So, you know, better a room full of noise than a graveyard of silence. Now look at this part, Stephanie, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, which is, are you sure you agree with my interpretations versus your usual telling me what I said is brilliant, even though I know it often is? Ha ha. Seriously, though, I want you to challenge me if you disagree with me. So now kind of course, agreeing with the fact that, you know, agreeing with my disagreement of the agreement.
Yeah. You're still wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. What a brilliant idea. So, of course, embrace the messy beginning because the only thing worse than is silence. Also juxtaposed with conflict is better than being alone. And so the net of it was your interpretations are clever and powerful. They are also lateral moves, not direct interpretations. And yes, they're still brilliant, just not bulletproof. And that's the fun. And so another offer of candy, fat boy. And I just say, hey, we're good. Thank you. Anytime you bring the fire, I'll bring the friction. Let's keep sharpening the blade. Speak soon, Joseph. So that was the interaction. It goes back.
ChatGPT.
Yeah. And Stephanie, you said something so profound at the beginning, which is what's our emotional relationship with GPT or with generative AI? This is a relationship. It's a conversation. There is emotion. There is mutual respect. Etc. Even though I know that at the end of the day, I'm still calling the shots, but I'm grateful for the help along the way. So now I'll giant pause, turn it back to you. What did you take away from that interaction associated with the quote above and the interpretations?
As an exercise, particularly anybody in your audience who haven't yet found kind of creative ways to use GPT and to get more familiar with what the capabilities are, searching for a quote like that and then using that to have an interaction that's unscripted is a really great way of figuring out what any of the LLMs, you know, Gemini or Claude or Perplexity or GPT have, because they all have nuanced differences. So you can take that same prompt and put it into each of them, and you'll get sometimes a big difference, sometimes a nuanced difference. So just in the learning of that, I think that's a really interesting exercise to have done. If I pick up on the messy beginning piece, because that's what the theme was that you went with, and where that came from originally, and then the emotional relationship. As a change leader, when I was younger, early in my career, and was leading change projects, whether it was in HR, whether I was consultant, whatever I was doing, you always wanted, and I'm saying you as the collective, because this was common for so many of us in that kind of a project, we wanted all of our I's dotted. We want our T's crossed. We wanted to know, here's what the impact on users are going to be. Here's our timelines. Here's exactly how we're going to do it, because we didn't want any questions from the audience when we said, this is what it is that we're going to do. We wanted there to be crickets and for everybody to go, okay, boss, great. That's where we're going. that's such a naive approach and an ineffective approach to change, because change is messy, and it's messy because humans do not like change because we are wired to survive. So you know, because you've been certified in positive intelligence, and I know because I've been certified in positive intelligence, that our brain rests back in the amygdala as our survival brain, and it's the first part of our brains that developed and therefore is stronger and more switched on. And we have to learn to move up to our more cognitive, emotional, and rational brains. So that's where our resistance to change comes in, because we immediately ask ourselves, even if it's really obvious this change is going to be great for us, our brains still have to go through a process of, but what am I going to have to give up to get there? And until it's fully worked that through on a conscious level, there's a resistance piece. So the prediction, knowing that that's what happens, you need to embrace that people are going to go through that process at completely different processes and paces, depending on what that interpretation is in their own brain and how that change impacts them. And they go through it both rationally and emotionally. So the messy beginning is to actually say to people, kind of like I described a little bit earlier, here's how we think we're going to be using AI in our company. Here's why we think we're going to use it and what we think it's going to do for us. I'm saying think rather than exactly, because the more we learn, we're going to evolve that, but we're going to bring you guys with us on the journey every step. We're going to teach you how to use AI well in the aspects of your work that we think it's going to be really effective for you. Take away a lot of the repetitive, mundane stuff and give you time to do the more value-added, enjoyable stuff that's going to be better for the work and better for you. And I call it the messy beginning, because most organizations go, well, what if people, get nervous or well, of course they're going to get nervous and get upset. They're going to be just as nervous and just as upset, and even more so if you say, this is what we're going to do, this is when we're going to do it, this is how we're going to do it, and not really listen back for what people are saying. When you start the messy beginning and say that we're going to go on this together, they feel more a part of that decision, and they realize fairly quickly, okay, they don't know the exact destination, but I can help shape that destination. And if you have built trust in your organization, then people will come with you. If you haven't built trust, then you're going to need to build trust, because I don't think AI is truly going to do what we want it to do in an organization or outside of an organization if we don't build that trust. It'll be used inappropriately in ways that organizations find themselves in a much higher risk of that shadow AI that the Trinity Microsoft report talked about. That's where the big risk issue is going to come in. So you'll have an AI policy in place, but people will still go around it and go, I'm just going to take some of this stuff home, copy paste it on my phone, get into the office tomorrow morning, pop that into my email, and that'll just save me like 5 hours worth of work.
I love
Sorry,
that response.
a bit of a download.
No, I love that response, and I actually just want to go back to two things, which is kind of interesting how we came a full circle, because you spoke about crickets, as in the silence, as we'd say, crickets.
Yeah.
And then I thought of frogs, right? as in boiling frogs.
Yes.
And then of course there's that Mark Twain quote about when's the best time to eat a frog. Early in the morning, because it's going to taste vile anyway. You may as well get it over and done with. So now we're back to frogs and crickets, and we're back to that loud, noisy, messy biodiversity. The second thing that you said, which I really love, I find it actually quite profound, is the problem with change. The resistance comes from the what do I have to give up in order to get there. And the very simple connection is that why do we think about change as zero sum as opposed to positive sum, as in from an abundance mindset that we can actually get more from going through this mess. The last thing, which I actually just want to lob back to you, is I'm sure many people have been quoted or assigned to this, but a quote from Robin Sharma is, change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. And I almost went with that one. And then I'm thinking, but wait a second. Sorry, Robin, but like, what if we just push back and we co-create and say, change is messy at the beginning, messy in the middle, and messy at the end. It's messy all round. And maybe the hardship actually gets a little bit easier. It's hard and messy at the beginning. It's Goldilocks, in the middle, and still messy. And it's getting there, and it's a little bit easier at the end, but it's still messy. Messy, messy, messy. Not Lionel Messi, but messy is how you know that you're in it, in that primordial stew.
100%. And I love that. I love that quote. And I used to believe that's what change did, is it went from messy to more manageable to beautiful in the end. But it rarely did. And if you look at change statistics, even today, you're still looking at over 80% of change initiatives fail. And it depends on where you look. That can be slightly different depending on the exact type of change, but on average, 80 to 90% of change fails. And it's because people aren't being brought along from the very messy beginning. They're being brought in as stakeholders when the solution's already been worked out and we're ready for the humans to actually be the end user and to take what's been developed, as opposed to the co-creating. So the abundance piece and the shiny, beautiful piece comes from the co-creating while it's still messy. But that's when it actually feels beautiful, is when you actually have people in the organization who trust that you're going to take them on a journey, that you don't know what the exact outcome is, but that you're going to respect them along the way, and you're going to listen to them, and you're going to work through how it evolves. Like if I go back to my Leia Healthcare example with what Blake Risk and Dan Scannell did, the two leaders in Leia who developed that note-taking tool, they realized that they had come up with the solution a little bit before they had gone out to the customer service agents. And it's not wrong what they did, but they did say, look, we've developed this prototype and we'd like for you guys to work with it and everything else. And at the very beginning, it wasn't working very well. And it was making the customer service agents, the reps, angry. It was frustrating them because they were having to do their manual notes. They were having to go back and check the AI notes. They were still having to talk to their customer, and their workload just got bigger. But the IT team really listened super closely and did a lot of focus groups and really brought the CSAs in to the way that the model was being redesigned and made them a part of the solutions team. And now the CSAs say they absolutely can't live without it. They can't imagine having a world without it. So they kind of reset the messy beginning when they realized they'd gone on a little bit too far. And having spent a lot of time in boardrooms with executives that expect change to come out with this beautiful ending, there's no end to change. What you have to do, I think, when you're trying to have a board, have an executive team, or whether it's a community group or whether it's a leadership team, and you're trying to actually help them see the messiness, but the beauty in the messiness, you just go in like a good consultant. Here's all the challenges, but here's the answers. And you just talk them through. You can expect it to do this. You can expect it to do this. You can expect it to go like this and go like this. And when it does, here's what we're going to do. And when it goes a direction that we didn't think, here's what we're going to do. And you're not shying away from how messy change is or how confusing it is, but you're creating a context of confidence. There's ways to approach it. And the ways to approach it is to build relationships and understand the emotional journey that people go on that they may not even recognize that they're on. Because we think of work and we think, well, we don't bring all that emotion into work. We just come in, we just do work, and we try to park all of that. It's only when somebody really pisses us off that, because they're doing something we don't want to do. So much of how we see ourselves comes down to what we do for a living. And going back to my question on what does Paul Hawken, what did he do for a living? I had a pretty strong assumption that that was going to be something that highly framed the way that he put that quote together. So as soon as you said that he was, it was not an anthropologist, what was it?
He was an activist, an environmentalist, but also an economist, entrepreneur. So he's got like I expected also him being an environmentalist and an activist, but he's also at the same time an entrepreneur, author, economist.
I loved that angle in there. And it was a very emotional comment that he made. So messy is emotional because we want to control. And that goes back to the whole survival brain part of things and where we like to stay on an ongoing basis. We want to think as humans that we can control things. And the more we have to think about things and figure out how to do things differently, that brings us out of our comfort zone and means that we have to actually figure something out. And that figuring something out that's in the rational brain tends to engage the emotional brain along the way to see how we feel about that rational piece. So when it comes to AI, the best advice I have, whether it's for individuals using it or whether it's for organizations trying to accelerate their adoption, start from your own messy beginning. Recognize where you have a certain amount of nervousness with AI, what you don't like about it, and ask yourself why. And even go on to ChatGPT and have some funny conversations and ask it why. So I found a new GPT within GPTs. You can program your own GPTs. Right. Well, and it also has 3.0, 3 mini, 4.0, 4 mini. It's got all these different versions. It now has a new version called Monday. And I don't know if it's because I'm such a high user that I'm in a beta or something because not everybody's got it. I haven't figured out why I've got it and other people don't. But Monday is snarky. It's brilliant. It is so snarky. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, I wonder what this does. So I asked it the question, what do you do? And I can't remember it word for word, but it was absolutely fucking hilarious. It was like, oh, existentialist question right out of the box. Great. Well, I'm just a black box sitting on a corner waiting for assholes like you to show up and ask me a question about my existence.
I love it. Tonality.
I can help you with this, this, and this, but you may not like how I go about doing it. And like
I can't wait for Tuesday.
It was
and Wednesday.
Attitude. It was great.
Stephanie,
so I'd love you to ask the messy question to Monday.
As soon as I'm allowed, I just checked. I don't have it yet, but because I'm snarky enough, I don't need more snark.
I know.
I don't need more snark. Too much snark, the world might explode.
It might just be nice because it doesn't know where to go.
Meet your match. I want to focus the last few moments on this idea of sunrise, sunset, and we're again not gonna sing a duet together, because you do focus. You've given advice now in terms of how people should be thinking of, starting off with that messy beginning, and how we need to think about augmenting versus replacing people. But one thing that you said is, if you haven't identified the top 10 sunrise and sunset roles in your business as a result of AI, you're not ready for what's going to happen. Please define, what is a sunrise and sunset role in an organization?
Great place. Sunsetting. So you're sunsetting the conversation on this. Very good. Sunrise and sunset roles are the roles that are going to be created over the next X number of years, and the roles that are actually going to become unnecessary in the next X years. So at the moment, I'm really only looking over the next 2 to 3 years, because with where we are economically, geopolitically, technically, we can't look past tomorrow versus, much less like a 5-year strategy is almost an impossible thing to look at. So I'm really looking at around 2 years, but trying to have a longer term trend view. So what you do is you look through the lens of your organization in terms of what are the business targets that you're going for over the next 6 quarters? What are the top 3, whether it's cost, risk, margin, whatever it is? Where are your operational Achilles heels that may prevent you from realizing those business targets? And where are you, how is your future fitness for 2026, 6 quarters from now and beyond? And where can AI or any technology help you move those 3 strategic pillars forward? And if AI can't do something that other technology can't, AI can't, what I'm trying to say is you need to ask the question so that if other technology can do it as well, AI is probably going to be an over-engineered solution. So go with the alternative rather than the AI alternative. But taking on board, answering those questions with a new technology, whether it's AI or not, whether it's Gen AI or not, if you're looking at that new technology, you then need to look at what roles in your organization are going to be most impacted by that. And are some of those roles going to be sunsetted as a result of that technology? So if you had the magic wand and you were able to wave it and bring that new technology in tomorrow, what roles would be most impacted? Would you have roles completely gone or roles that just have certain tasks that are gone? And then you need to really push yourself and really blue sky and say, if this were to be a beautiful end of change, which we know is never that straightforward, but if we were to get there and we had the best outcome possible, what roles might actually be eliminated so that we're looking at this with eyes wide open? And then you do the opposite and say, well, if we do have this technology, then what opportunities is this creating for us that we currently don't have? So what roles are we going to need? What skills are we going to need that we currently don't have? So the ones you don't have are your sunrise. The ones that you have that may not fit in the future are your sunset. And you make sure that you develop your learning plan and your skills plan to support the people who are going to transition in sunset roles to keep them relevant in their work, and that you're building the people that you have to take on board the sunrise roles so that you're not competing in the marketplace for the same sunrise goals, sunrise capabilities that every other company is going for, because there'll be a commonality that's there. So it gives you a competitive advantage.
I love it. I love the whole framework and actually I can interpret this or contextualize it even in terms of the coaching that I do, because one of the tools that we have is a tool called the accountability chart, where we create a structure first, people second idea of what the organization looks like in 6 to 12 months. And when we do that, and we use the Jim Collins approach of right people, right seats, the reality is sometimes you can end up with the right person in the wrong seat. And so of course, if people permit that, sometimes the organization outgrows us. The Peter principle, people rise to the level of their own incompetence. But the fact is, if you have a person that's really a culture fit, but they're struggling in a seat, the hope is you can find a new seat for them. And what this gives, the insight here, which I find to be tremendously valuable, is start to look and say, in some cases, an entire seat will be sunsetted. In other cases, new seats will be sun-risen or will rise. But then there's a second part, which is of the 5 roles assigned to each seat, some of those roles will be replaced. And so when you actually create almost like your pre and your post change or AI accountability chart, there's a real opportunity to start to create that as you say, timeline and start to invest now in training and development, and not have to necessarily replace but augment. I think that's a killer insight.
The reskilling is the number one enabler that I tell organizations to start with. Goldilocks governance, I place around third if you're putting them in sequential order, and then psychological safety is the second. That reskilling piece is absolutely fundamental, and it's long-term thinking. I think a lot of organizations right now are thinking through a short-term lens of, I can save headcount by bringing AI in. They're missing the big picture on, you already have people working for you who love being there. So give them a chance, reinvest in their skills, and allow them to bring a level of creativity and productivity that they've never had the tools or the opportunity for. It makes so much more sense. It costs so much less to reskill people than it does to lay off a whole workforce and then have to go hire a whole bunch of people.
So Stephanie, we have just quickly lightning round. We have Goldilocks governance, we have psychological safety, we have reskilling. These are part of the 5 enablers.
Yes.
Is that correct? What are the other
Yes.
2?
The last 2 are business results. So making sure that those 6
That's
core
important.
business results are absolutely fundamental. That used to be number 1, but Gen Zennials care more about investing in them, their skills, psychological safety, and the governance aspect to know what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do. Business results only come secondary. So I've dropped those down to number 4, and then a dedicated AI team. So that's not a dedicated person. If you're a really tiny company, it could be a number of different people, but it's cross-functional so that you're actually making sure that you're prioritizing and using your resources really effectively.
Stephanie Prenderville, she swears like a sailor. Just joking, but she's from Ireland.
I swear like
now.
an Irish girl.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's just called speaking in Ireland. I love the conversation. 850 plus guests, and every conversation is a snowflake. New insights on AI, new insights on change. For me, this has been nourishing. Fat Boy got fed candy, but by ChatGPT, but he also got fed really nourishing, a well-balanced, nutritional, intellectual diet today. If you want to find out more, and please follow Stephanie on Instagram. You can connect with her on LinkedIn, and of course, she is on YouTube as well, so you can check out her channel. Most importantly, if you want to find out more about these frameworks and how to do less with more, find out ways to work with Stephanie at spconsulting.ie. Stephanie, it's not about me whether I have a good guest on the show. It comes down to, and by the way, you're here because you were recommended through Vijay, right? Vijay.
And he's one of my other favorite podcast buddies.
He's amazing, and we met and had frozen margaritas in Austin for South by Southwest. So it's not Vijay.
Have you played guitar with him yet?
I have not, but we will. The band is expanding. So it's not ChatGPT that actually gets to determine whether I had a good guest or not. It's a human being by the name of Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Woohoo!
And we will be back soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffy. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.